And we're back. Okay, Jeremy, let's wrap up the second portion of our midseason awards. Let's look at the Heisman. We haven't really talked about this that much yet, but who is your Heisman pick if you had to pick right now?
I really think you have to look at Missouri and Chase Daniel. 1,665 yards, 15 touchdowns, only 1 interception, completing over 76% of his passes. I really like Chase Daniel for the simple fact that without him, Missouri would be in a lot of trouble. That spread offense, they sling the ball around, and he's got them to a number 3 ranking, which is by far the highest point in that program's history.
I think talent-wise, you look at Bradford and Daniel, they seem to be the 2 front runners for the Heisman right now. I'm going to pick Bradford for the simple fact that I don't really think this thing is going to come down to who wins the Big 12 title game if these 2 teams play. And right now, if you put a gun in my head, I'd have to pick Oklahoma. So I'm going to pick Bradford as the Heisman front runner right now. Once again, that could change easily. Coach of the Year. A lot of candidates available for this spot right now. Coach of the Year, if you had to name it, once again, halfway through the season, who would you pick?
Well, there are a lot of candidates, but there's hands down a clear winner, and that's Bobby Johnson at Vanderbilt. Taking them to the peak of their program's history, just really 3 impressive wins over 3 good football teams. They beat Ole Miss, then Ole Miss just goes down to the swamp and beats Florida. Very impressive, knocking off a beleaguered Auburn team last week. Bobby Johnson, hands down, the coach of the year in college football.
Yeah, I got to agree with that. It's unanimous. Bobby Johnson, and once again, people who really have never, covered the SEC or really been around SEC football, you can't really fully understand how hard it is to win at Vanderbilt. Reese Davis said on ESPN earlier this week, classic analogy. He said Vanderbilt has been like the Charlie Brown in the SEC. Holding the football there, they come running towards it, and then whoop. That's been Vanderbilt football for like the past century. So very impressive what Vanderbilt's done. If they lose every game the rest of the season, which they won't, but even if they lose every game the rest of the season, he's still done a heck of a job to get this program where it is right now. All right, let's move on to some Week 7 spotlight games. We've got 3 we're going to go over right now. Let's start at Camp Randall Stadium. Ohio State beats Wisconsin in the primetime game last Saturday night. Penn State comes in with a number 6 ranking, another primetime Saturday night game this week. The question has got to be, after that heartbreaking loss to Ohio State, is there anything left in the tank for Wisconsin?
Well, you look at Wisconsin, and really, I believe this game is a pride issue. You have a 16-game winning streak going into last week and just have it snapped. Now you have another huge test coming in. Going to be a big game for Wisconsin. If they can get things turned back around, still with a shot to have a good season, it's really going to be a downer if they lose to Penn State.
You mentioned the 16-game winning streak. It's a 16-game home winning streak, and Brett Bielema is 16 for 16 in home games before last week since he's been there. I said last week I couldn't pick him in any of these 2 games, Ohio State or Penn State, and I'm going to stick with that. I think you go 0 for 2 if you're Brett Bielema after winning your first 16 at home. This game for Wisconsin is not going to build character. This is a game that really is going to define the character of that football team because they look like they're out of it for the conference title. So like you said, this is going to be a pride issue for that Wisconsin football team. Talent-wise, they can get it done. But mentally, after what happened last week, you got to wonder what you're going to get from the Badgers. I mean, the band kicked out of the stadium last week. That should be something that maybe helps them this week.
Well, you look at the band and you laugh that off, but that's definitely a help to the environment of the stadium that you have that music playing. Anytime you go to a road football game, if that team brings their band, there's always more of an up-tempo spirit. The crowd can chant, sing along. Not a huge deal, but definitely a big deal. But when you look at defining character, Penn State has a character breaker in the form of Evan Royce. You look at that game against Purdue. In a championship caliber football team, we talked about this in the first segment, every week does not look pretty. Purdue, not a great football team. Penn State still wins by 2 touchdowns. Evan Royster, dominant physically over that Purdue defense, 194 all-purpose yards. Very, very big impact player in Evan Royster.
And Doyle didn't mention this, but Penn State, a 5-point favorite. Interesting stat. Penn State is undefeated in their program's history playing a team that is coming off a loss in which their band was suspended. So that's a very interesting stat. You got to lead Penn State with ammo like that. All right, let's move to Missouri. They beat Nebraska badly last week. They welcome in a 17th-ranked Oklahoma State team. The over-under could be at about 110 for this game. A lot of offense expected in this game. What do we see?
Well, you talk about points. Oklahoma State averaging 52.6 per game, and Missouri a measly 53.4 points per game. Battle of the defenses here on Saturday night.
You know, we mentioned the offense. I really think, you know, like we said, both teams can score. I think Missouri's defense showed me a little bit against Nebraska. Now, Nebraska is not going to throw the ball around the yard like Oklahoma State, but I think Missouri can slow down Oklahoma State. I don't think Oklahoma State can slow Missouri down.
Well, I tell you what, we joke about it, but the key is going to be if one of these teams can step up and play some form of defense. And I think the difference is going to be Missouri being able to stop Des Bryant. You look at Zach Robinson, he has 10 touchdowns, and 9 of those are to one receiver in Des Bryant. If you're Missouri, double or triple cover Des Bryant, you stop him, you force Oklahoma State to make big plays with their other receivers. Now, if they do that, you know, hats off to Oklahoma State, hats off to the Cowboys, but I would force them to do that. Then maybe Missouri has a big advantage.
That Oklahoma State defense has given up 37 to Houston so far this year and 28 to Texas A&M. So it should be interesting. That is a man-maker game for the Oklahoma State defense. We shift our attention to Gainesville, Florida. Any other week, this would be our spotlight game. But with the Red River Shootout, I refuse to call it a Red River Robbery, happening this week. A number 4 ranked LSU against a number 11 ranked Florida team. Just on deck compared to our spotlight game. LSU coming off the bye week. Florida, meanwhile, top Arkansas 38-7, and more importantly, seemed to get maybe on track a little bit more offensively. What do we see happening in this game?
Well, you talk about them getting on track offensively. How about the LSU defense? Well, they are coming off a bye week, but you look at what happened in their last game, giving up 24 points to Mississippi State, who, if you've been watching, scored 2 points against Auburn, and thanks to an Auburn safety. And they really have just, they were shut out by Georgia Tech. I mean, not a very strong offense for Mississippi State. So questions on the LSU defense.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people asking, is Florida really ready to face the LSU defense? I think maybe you got to ask yourself, is LSU's defense ready to face the Florida offense? Because, you know, they may have looked a little bit impressive, and, you know, we haven't really seen them tested with a true prolific offense. Now, I'm not calling Florida prolific yet by any stretch of the imagination, but LSU is going to see speed that they haven't seen yet this season on defense.
Well, I think they will. And when you look at speed, it's definitely there in Florida. But I think you also have to look at physicality. When you look at physicality on both sides, LSU on the defensive side, Tyson Jackson. On the offensive side, Charles Scott. Just physical. And on both the lines, just physical manpower on offense and defense. And I think that may be a key to this game.
And once again, I think the bye week plays a big role right here. I mean, LSU, whatever they did do right against Mississippi State, you got to think Les Miles will have corrected before this, possibly the biggest game of their season in Gainesville. This, if they win, would set them up great for a possible SEC title run in the West. That is the end of our 3 spotlight games. We'll focus on Oklahoma and Texas a little bit later. But right now, it's time, Jeremy, to send it to Ryan Doyle for his Friends of the Week for Week 6. Let's send it to him now.
Hey there, friends. Don't mind the radio. I like to jam out. This week, my Friends of the Week, I got 2. LaShawn McCoy from Pittsburgh had 28 rushes, 142 yards with 2 touchdowns. And then we got Juice Williams with 431 total yards and 4 touchdowns against Michigan. That's a pretty nice game, friend. And then I got timeout. Sadly, I got to go ahead and real quick put Phil back in for the nice 4-point win against Northern Illinois. And then we got Maryland Fighting Turtles' whole freaking team for getting dominated 31-0 against Virginia. They got beat, last week against Duke? Got hammered by Duke. That's ridiculous. And then I got to stop putting Tommy Tuberville in, and we're going to put the offensive coordinator, Tony Franklin, in there from Auburn. Just, you got to score at least 3 points after the after the first quarter comes around, friends. Other than that, that's it, guys. Back to you guys. Back to you.